as I usually like to do, I would like to start with a story, okay? Story time with Pastor Rod. Let's call it that way. So this past Valentine's Day, my wife and I, we decided not to go out on a date on Valentine's Day. We decided to wait 2 days and then go out on a date. And no, it's not because I'm cheap, although that may, you may argue a little bit of that. But we had this newborn baby, which Caitlin is right in the back right now with Uncle Jeff. And we had to bring her along because Annie's still breastfeeding, so we need to keep her close by. Otherwise, she gets really, really unsettled. But anyway, we brought her with us to our date at Red Lobster. Annie chose the restaurant. And as we thought, it wouldn't be so busy. And it was confirmed. As we arrived there at the restaurant, it was not super busy. It was pretty easy to be seated and so on. And there was this very attentive waitress. She seemed to be very attentive. She brought us in and sat us down, and she gave us some menus, as usually, the whole 9 yards, the way it goes. Right? She gives us the menus, she gives us our drinks, and then she brings those delicious Red Lobster biscuits. Oh, they're so good. Some of you will go to Red Lobster right after this, right? It's so good. And anyway, so as she gave us all the stuff, she said, okay, I'll be back in a minute. And then she went out, and Annie started talking. Both of us started talking. It was a date, right? So Annie and I were talking to each other, enjoying our date together, Valentine's date. And we started to notice, okay, she said a minute, but now several minutes have passed by, and here we are waiting still. And our baby's a little unsettled and restless. So we're starting to get up, and okay, what we're doing now, she's not coming. Then finally she comes, we place our orders in, and then we wait even longer. 10, 15, 20 minutes later, our food, and we were looking back, like we were looking around us, and everybody else seemed to be getting their food. It was kind of like an interesting thing. But we have not been getting our food still. We're still waiting. And as we were waiting, like at one point we thought, like she may have forgotten us. I mean, I'm just wondering when she'll ever remember to come back. We feel a little forgotten right now. So eventually the food came, and we ended up, by God's grace, giving her a good tip still at the end. But it was quite an ordeal. I mean, our baby was restless, and sometimes I wonder, right, why they call them waiters when we are the ones doing the waiting? I'm still, just think about that. But God was gracious, and it was quite a Valentine's Day experience for us. But have you ever experienced something like that? A time in which the long wait for something that you really wanted in life made you feel forgotten. Maybe you've been looking for a job like myself, from application to application, interview to interview. You go and your hope is to one day hear the words, you got the job. But those words never seem to come. Or perhaps you've been battling a disease or chronic pain. And every day you get up, it's the same thing, the same pain that doesn't go away. And all you're looking for is some relief. The day that pain will go away and you'll have relief and you'll be able to enjoy a normal life. Or yet you look around and see many of your friends dating and getting married and having babies and starting families while you feel stuck in time. As if God had put you on hold, or worse yet, as if God had forgotten you. I believe all of us at one point or another will go through seasons of waiting in life, and perhaps you're living that season right now. You're living in that place of waiting. And it's that place where sometimes the present makes us feel stuck in between, right? In that place in between. In between the places we've been with the past victories and perhaps defeats, and the places we want to be with, where there is relief and the chance for a new beginning. Where is God when I feel stuck? Where is God when the wait is long and life is uncertain? Where is God when I feel abandoned and forgotten? This morning, as we continue our series in the book of Genesis entitled, Where It All Began, we'll try to answer some of these questions as we continue to unpack the events that Pastor Ed was preaching on, I think 2 weeks ago, when he introduced the flood to us and Noah and so on. So we're going to continue that story. And at the conclusion of this message, my hope is that you will know that the wait may feel long, but you are not forgotten. The wait may feel long, but you are not forgotten. So open your Bibles or your Restoration Church app with the Bible in there in Genesis chapter 8. And as you're going there, let me just catch you all up on where we've been so far. In chapter 6, Pastor Ed, he preached on the beginning of all these events of the flood. And since every intention of man's heart was evil all the time, we're told in chapter 6, God decided to judge the earth. And he was going to send a flood that would cover all the earth, and it would eliminate everybody who had the breath of life in them. God is just. People are evil. And he had to deal with that in a way that wouldn't go against his character, right? So he had to be just. But God is merciful and gracious as well. And he chose a man, Noah, and his family to build a huge boat capable of keeping safe any living creature that would enter it during the flood, or before the flood, right? For 120 years they built that boat. It took a long time. It was a big, big boat. And during the 120 years, Noah and his family, they invited people into the ark. Come, save your life by entering this ark that God has told me to build. But unfortunately, the invitation had no takers. No one but his family. And heavy rains fell on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights. No creature outside the ark, with the exception, of course, of marine and water creatures, survived the judgment sent by God. And after 40 days, the heavy rain stopped, and the ark began to float into the unknown. Imagine the scene. The world filled with water, and you're in that ark, and all you see is a horizon filled with water, and you're floating into the unknown. And then we read this in chapter 8, verse 1. But God remembered Noah and all the wild animals and the livestock that were with him in the ark. Noah and his family had just gone through a very traumatic experience. As heavy rain stopped and they were floating around with no clue where they would land, where they would go next. And probably they were feeling during that time, inside of that ark, they probably feeling a little bit alone and forgotten. Then God says this, or then we read this, that God said, well, not God said, then we read this, God remembered Noah. Now, according to this author called John Davis, in the book Paradise to Prison, the term remembered refers not to God's mercy, but to his activity. It always emphasizes God's faithful love and intervention on behalf of his own. This is like the same sense that Samson, Hannah, and the thief on the cross longed to be remembered by God. In other words, Noah was not forgotten. He was loved as God remembered him. In the last 3 months, our community group has, or not just our community group, all our community groups, we're going through this book called Groups, The Life-Giving Power of Community by John Ortberg. And in this book, the author points out that we all have a need to be noticed. We all want to feel noticed in some way. If somebody comes in here and nobody notices that person, there is something inside of us like, hey, this place is not very friendly, or it's not a warm environment. I don't know if I want to connect with these people. But anyway, that's kind of how we feel, right? So we have this longing to be noticed, to be remembered. And the author writes this: Love recalls the significant events that happened in our friend's life last week. Love remembers a loss that was suffered a year ago on this day. Love is in the details. Love remembers. And God here loved His people and He remembered them. He remembered His people. But then, how did God remember His people? He began to act on their behalf as He sent one sign after another, as we're going to read next. First, second part of verse 1. He sent a wind over the earth and the waters receded. What a great relief Noah and his family must have felt when the waters began to go down. They probably thought to themselves, God, remember us. Now we'll be able to step in dry ground very soon. Well, not so fast, Noah, because it took 330 more days until they stepped on dry ground. They were inside of that boat for a long, long period of time. And a few years ago, I have been in an ark-type experience in the Orlando International Airport. It was quite an ark experience. But anyway, I was there coming back from a conference, came in, and I realized that as I was looking out, all these clouds were starting to roll in. In Orlando Airport, I don't know if you ever flew from there, but it seems like there's always a storm there somewhere. But these clouds were rolling in, and I was like, I don't know if we're going to get off of here. I think we're going to be delaying this flight, or the flight will be canceled. But I realized that the airline begins to board people. I was like, okay, so we're going to try to beat this thing, beat the storm. And as we were boarding, the clouds seemed to be getting closer and closer and closer. And suddenly, as we are taxiing and going to the runway, and we are right there in front of the runway, and we're next. And if we don't go now, we don't go, right? This family gets up. And they are freaking out and saying that to the crew, we need to go back to the gate. We want to get out of this plane. They were really, the clouds were pretty. So I'm trying not to pass judgment on the family because I don't like flying, right? So as they're freaking out, I'm thinking like, okay, maybe this is a God sign, maybe we shouldn't go on this thing. But at the same time, people were upset, as we were taxiing back and going back to the gate, and everybody had to be in the plane because they didn't want to check people back in. So we were in the plane, and these people left, this family left, and as they leave, it starts pouring like crazy, like almost a flood. Although God will promise, we'll see later that this is not going to happen again. So I was relieved, right? But it was such a situation, and then we had to stay there for 4 hours. We stayed 4 hours inside of the plane, and there were no peanuts and juice that would keep us happy in there, right? But they tried. But anyway, after 4 hours, we took off. But when you feel stuck somewhere for a long period of time, waiting can make you feel very anxious, and the situation, for a situation to have a change in that situation. You feel very anxious because you want to see some change, something happen. In my case, every 2 minutes I was looking outside, and I was hoping to see clouds rolling back and like the sky, the blue sky showing, a little ray of sunshine or something. I was looking for a sign that, okay, I have to wait here longer. I have to wait here for 4 hours, but God, give me a sign. Give me a sign that we're getting out of here soon. Give me a sign. So all I was doing was looking anxiously for a sign. And Noah and his family may have felt similar, right? They're stuck in this boat for the longest time. And I'm sure that they were looking for some kind of sign that this was going to be over soon. They had no control over that boat, by the way, right? They couldn't move it. They couldn't steer it. They had to rely completely on God's grace, mercy, and wisdom and timing while they were in there. So I imagine that they wanted a sign. And as the waters were receding, okay, that's a good sign, Noah, but guess what? I still feel like I'm in the middle of the ocean because everywhere I look, it's water everywhere. And then verse 3, keep reading, 3 and 4. At the end of the 150 days, 110 days after the rain had stopped, by the way, verse 4, the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. Okay, so, all right, God. We're here floating into the unknown, but now we're not floating anymore. It's like the boat got stuck somewhere, okay? There's something happening here. I'll keep believing, Lord. I'll keep believing. And then in verse 5, the tops of the mountains became visible. So they're in this mountain range, and suddenly, I see the top of the mountain. I see a sign that you are still working with us, Lord. The signs, I believe, that became an encouragement to Noah as they waded into that boat, inside that boat. Last year, Pastor Ed convinced me to run this Mission 10-miler. I don't know why I did it, but I went through the training, run 10 miles. I'm not a runner, before I kept saying, I'll never run. I ended up doing it. And I liked it for a while, but then I realized, I don't know if it is for me. But he invited me to do this thing, right? So as I was training for this run, I decided, okay, I want to run through familiar places. Because when I run through familiar places, I go like this. All right, Rod, you just need to finish this road. Finish this road, and you'll be in a good place. So I go in, and I finish the road. Okay, Rod, go to that bus stop. And then I go into the bus stop. I knew every sign in that route, because every time I would go to that sign, I knew where I was in my route. And I knew that my route was coming to an end, right? I knew that I was almost over with this thing. So I would go sign after sign to be able to finish this training. And get somewhat distracted and find encouragement to keep going. And Noah here, again, the top of the mountains, he started to see, got stuck, top of the mountains. Things are starting to move. There's something happening, and God is still with us. Now, the signs didn't stop there, okay? Noah, starting in verse 6, he begins to make some experiments of his own, all right? Verse 7, 6 and 7, but verse 7 I'm reading. He sent out a raven, and he kept flying back and forth until the water had dried up from the earth. So ravens are often found in cliffs and mountains terrain, which may have been the reason why Noah used a raven. But one thing he forgot is that ravens are scavengers. So after a while, that raven was going back and forth, back and forth. After a while, it didn't come back anymore. It stayed because probably found something dead out there and was feeding on it. I know it sounds gross, but that's when he had to come with plan B. That's my take on it, at least. Plan B, he started using doves. Okay, let's use a dove now. Then he sent out a dove, verse 8. But the dove could find no place to set his feet. So it returned to Noah in the ark. Verse 10, he waited 7 more days, and again he sent out a dove from the ark. When the dove returned to him in the evening, there in its beak was a freshly plucked olive leaf. Then Noah knew that the water had receded from the earth. Noah and his family were now probably very hungry and tired. And this wait has been way too long. But God was working. And verse 12, he waited 7 more days and sent the dove yet again. Sent it out again. But this time, it did not return to him. Some 377 days after the waters started coming down and they entered that ark, the earth was now completely dry. Verse 15, then God said to Noah, verse 16, come out of the ark. Come out of the ark. God remembered Noah. And he did not remember him only at the time that he said, come out of the ark. As we've been able to see, as we saw sign after sign, God was present with Noah all along. From Noah's salvation from the flood to the many signs of love during the wait in the ark, God was with Noah. The wait may have felt long, Noah, but you are not forgotten. You are not forgotten. Soon after getting out of the ark, verse 20, Noah built an altar to the Lord. And he sacrificed burnt offerings on it. Noah's first response as he left the ark was to remember the one who saved him. Remember the one who saved him. And he offered a sacrifice, demonstrating gratitude towards God. And my wife and I, we serve our neighbors in our apartment community by throwing parties and welcoming new neighbors to the community. Like, that's kind of one of the things that we do. And we are called the CARES team in our community. While we do what we do, regardless of people remembering us or appreciating us, once in a while when somebody does that, it feels good, right? It feels good to be noticed and remembered like that. A few days ago, after one of the events, a neighbor sent us an email, which was a very encouraging email. And I'm going to read it to you. She wrote this: "You and your husband make living at Hidden Creek a true joy for me. The events you create are so imaginative, creative, and just plain fun. I don't know many people in the area, so your events are the highlight of my month. I'm always happy when I can attend because I feel welcome and part of an extended family. I have the warm feeling because of the care you and Rod place in the gatherings." Now, I don't say this to inflate my head or anything like that, but this email has encouraged us to keep on caring and loving for our neighbors. It was just something we needed at a time where we've been doing this for like 2 years now. So, 2.5 years now. So it can get old sometimes. 3 events a month we do, every month. And we needed to hear something like this. And it was very encouraging to us. As we read, and then as we read here, at the end of the chapter, this act of worship by Noah moved the heart of God, resulting in God making a commitment towards mankind. Verse 21, "The Lord smelled the pleasing aroma and said in his heart, 'Never again will I curse the ground because of man. Even though every inclination of man's heart is evil from childhood, and never again will I destroy all living creatures as I have done,'" by water here, right? "As long as the earth endures, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night will never cease." God promises to never flood the earth again. A new beginning was about to take place, and Pastor Ed will unpack that more in the following weeks as we continue unpacking the story of Noah and the new beginning that God is giving and starting with him. So next week you're going to hear about that. But God remembered his people. What an amazing thought. Now, as I begin to draw this message to a close, let me ask you this. Are you currently living inside the ark? You're not who or where you were before, but you're not who or where you want to be either. You've been on hold, waiting, in that place in between. Perhaps you've been waiting for some financial stability, and so you can actually begin saving for that house or that vacation that you so want to take your family in. Or maybe you've been struggling to change some bad habit in life. And the progress that you have made does not feel like enough. It doesn't feel like you have become the person that you want to become yet. So like the progress that you've made, it doesn't, Lord, I want to see more. And you are in that place of waiting. Or yet you've been stuck in a very tough situation that you never saw coming, and you have no idea how to get out of it. You have no idea how to get out of it. Let me remind you of this. You are not forgotten. You are not forgotten. And if you can see that yet, begin to pay attention to the signs of God's love while you float around inside of that ark. Yes, maybe tell yourself this. Yes, being in a tight financial situation is not great. But hey, I had a roof over my head and enough food on the table last month. I will be okay. I am not forgotten. Or, yes, I have not been able to completely change into the person I want to be, but hey, I haven't been, going off of on my friends, and I haven't been sleeping with my girlfriend, and you have been going through some things, and you have seen progress. Look at those signs, and remember, you're not forgotten. Yes, my schedule is chaotic, and still I have not figured out how to manage my schedule wisely, but hey, I have spent quality time with my kids yesterday. I am not forgotten. Find encouragement in your progress. Find encouragement in the signs of God's love in your life. Yeah, the wait may be long, but you're not forgotten. God is all along with you. Now, maybe you have stepped out of the ark. Maybe you started the new beginning. You've been delivered, given a second chance. And if that is you, remember the one who delivered you. Remember the one who saved you from the place in between. The one who gave you a new beginning. Oftentimes we feel compelled to remember God in our dire need and in our greatest moment of need. But we forget Him in our times of joy. Learn to be grateful, a grateful person to the one who has brought you to the place of joy you're in right now. Don't forget Him. And you never know. Your gratitude may do what happened to Noah, right? May move the heart of God to do something towards you, the people around you, and who knows? The wait may feel long, and I don't know what you're waiting for and what kind of ark God has placed you in right now. But hang in there. The wait may feel long, but you are not forgotten. And if you have to say that to yourself, just like I did in the previous message, put that 3x5 card somewhere that you can see often and write this thing. The wait may feel long, but I am not forgotten. I am not forgotten. And allow that to be a sign to you that God is with you in the ark, in the times of waiting. We are not forgotten. We are remembered. Let's bow our heads and pray. Heavenly Father,